Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 8th edition of Sesamers on Tour. I'm Ben Costantini, CEO of Startup Sesame. Our team has been working hard to bring you new and exciting content every week to explore different tech ecosystems. From our kickoff event in Paris to our session last week about Poland, we're making our way around the globe every single Tuesday. If you want to know more about the tour and sign up for updates, head over to tour.sesamers.com. Today is our 8th stop, and we're covering Latvia in collaboration with TechChill. Our partner TechChill celebrates the best of the Baltic startup community by bringing together every year more than 2,000 attendees, including the fastest growing startups, the most innovative corporations and investors in the region. Their annual conference took place just like last month and ran over 3 weeks. That's all for me. I'll come back at the very end to tell you about our upcoming stuff.
Hi. Thank you, Ben, for the introduction. Hi from Riga. We are really excited to host the Stop and Startup Sesames Global Tour dedicated to the Latvian startup ecosystem. My name is Anna Mežgaile, and I'm the CEO of TechChill, a nonprofit foundation working to help Baltic startups succeed in the world. We are also behind the flagship tech and startup event in the Baltics of the same name. Last year, TechChill was the first last in-person event for so many people. This year, just a little over a week ago, we celebrated our 10th anniversary with an online edition of our event, bringing together around 2,000 people from more than 50 countries. But we're so excited to hopefully go back to an in-person event next year, when we hope to welcome all of you in Riga from 17 to 19 February 2021. There will be not only amazing content, plenty of opportunities to network and do business, but also our traditional after parties, sauna and beer. Don't miss it. But now let's get back to the matter at hand. It's time to dive into the Latvian startup ecosystem and all it can offer. I'd like to give the floor to my colleague Aris to introduce today's agenda and get the show started. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Annie, and also thank you to Ben and the whole Startup Sesame team for inviting us to be one of the stops on their global tour. I'm Aris. I'm going to be the master of ceremonies of sort for today, just to help the event move along. First of all, I want to say that we are very excited to host this session for 2 reasons. One is that the Startup Sesame community has been really helpful for all event organizers. We've been having weekly calls already starting from last March. I personally took part in most of them, I think, and it's been really useful to share amongst the peers the hidden treasures and also the more traveled roads to avoid. And the second reason is that, as Anya mentioned, just very recently we finished 2 weeks of online content for TechChill 2021 edition, and this will be the last online event that we're involved in the very near future. So it is great to wind down in a relaxed manner among friends and to know that we can take a short breather before we start up again in full speed for the next year. Now, relax doesn't mean that it won't be useful. So today we want to give you an insight into one of the most exciting startup ecosystems out there. Just a few months ago, Index Ventures actually claimed that Latvia is the most startup-friendly country in the world. And while that might feel like a bit of a stretch, it is very clear indication that we are on the right track and that further success is within our reach. So, for example, last week we started with very exciting news, and I'm sure that we're going to mention it a few times today, but I'm going to leave that for later. But there's so much more to know about the Latvian startup ecosystem, and who would better to educate us than the CEO of the Latvian Startup Association, Startin LV. So without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Olga Barreto-Gonçalves to tell us what's popping in the Latvian startup ecosystem. Olga.
Hi, hello guys. Thank you for having me today. I hope my video and sound are all good. So Good to be here, and indeed, I'm the new CEO of Latvian Startup Association. I've been with the association for just over a month, and it's been quite a journey already. And I think that, yes, let's just do it. Please do share my presentation, the magical man behind the scene, and I will let you know what exactly has been going on in the ecosystem. I was a little bit worried that I would get the major spoiler for the great news, which we are ready to announce by now. And yeah, it took me the whole night to draw this little unicorn here. I hope you appreciate that one. But yeah, congrats to all of us. The first unicorn in Latvia is here, and it's Printful. And it's an amazing story of a team who's been bootstrapping for quite some time. And last year in 2020, they showed the global turnover of more than $200 million and also paid substantial taxes here in Latvia. And this is something, the government side always wonders about, like what is the added value for the economy? And it's huge in this case. And yes, just a couple of weeks ago, it happened with the investment raised amounting to $130 million. The valuation of Printful officially has surpassed $1 billion. So congrats to all of us. I hope you are as excited as us. And we do expect quite enormous boost, which comes with this occasion, right? The very ecosystem is now celebrating. All the people, are really uplifted, and it does show that and prove that we can, Latvia can. It does answer, as I mentioned, the question of the government. Does it really matter if we support startups or not? Should we, could we, would we? Well, yes, the government should. Everybody should pay serious attention to this very dynamic, let's say, industry and field of business. I mean, startups altogether. So yeah, amazing news and amazing little unicorn here. Let's hope for more. The future does seem bright from where we stand right now. And then I would also like to announce maybe, and share with you that we have some new kids on the blog in terms of money side, let's say. We do have a new venture fund, which is called Launch VC, and they have a focus on biotechnology, and the overall money they are ready to channel into early stage startups is 35 million euros. So good news for deep tech startups. And then we have another fund which has just been launched. Well, granted, it's a private equity kind of a fund, but still it's out there scouting for big deals, well, comparatively big deals, and also committing 10% of their investments for environmental friendly companies. So that would be the focus of their interest. And another interesting thing, we have a new consortium being formed in Latvia, which is Future Mobility. A lot of non-government organizations joined. We also are supporting. The Latvian Startup Association is supporting. And yeah, so basically a new small bubble in the bubble of the Latvian startup ecosystem is being formed to test and promote green and smart technologies in Latvia, which is really good thing to see. And then a very important update regarding legislation, in my opinion. So I'm not entirely sure how much you guys would know about the startup law here in Latvia, those who are watching us at the moment. But since 2017, we have a piece of legislation which was designed for startups, early stage startups, to give them substantial tax cuts. And I will be honest, At the very beginning, it did not really work that well. It was a nice gesture coming from the government that we are here to support you, but the practicalities of the law was just too cumbersome. And so what happened about half a year ago, give or take, the startup law was amended and emerged as a beauty, and now the startups finally can enjoy it to the fullest. So it's a very big win, I would say, for the ecosystem and for the startups. And another important piece of, let's say, legislation was basically the harmonization of existing laws regarding the employee stock options. So what it basically means that now startups being formed as limited liabilities companies, they can actually offer their employees these stock options, and there are no tax consequences such as they were before regarding income tax and all that. And the holding period before the employees can actually act on their stocks has been also reduced to 12 months. So altogether, this shapes a very, I would say, yummy environment for startups to operate. And exactly as it was mentioned already, after this was presented to the whole world, Index Ventures indeed called us the top startup-friendly ecosystem in Europe. So another great win for us. And I would like to use this opportunity to say thank you to all those people who were part of this initiative to make all the ministries understand why it's important to get them on board. It's been quite a battle, but the result was definitely worth it. And another thing, maybe a couple updates from how the government is getting accustomed to the startup ecosystem and their support and what's been happening there. So it is becoming quite clear that the new darlings, I would say, of the national government of Latvia are two major things. One is quite large overall. It's deep tech. So whatever deep science technologies are out there, the government is particularly happy about. And another thing is smart specialization. So be it smart materials or smart mobility, or we are now surrounding our focus, around the word smart, which is, again, a good thing. And what it means in practical terms, that in future we can expect that quite a lot of focus of the government support programs and tools would be actually focused on these areas. Not to mention that others are supported as well, but these are the gems in the crown, so to say. And also at the moment, quite substantial support scheme is already ongoing. That's the Norway grant, where startups, but not necessarily startups, innovative companies overall can claim up to 600,000 euros as grant for their development. And at the moment, quite a lot of startups, it is known to me, are considering using that. And then, of course, the new planning period is here when, Latvia, being part of the European Union, is currently basically forecasting what would be the next 6, 7, 8 years in terms of economic development, and placing quite a big bet on innovation, startups, green, sustainable tech. So a lot of exciting news coming in that area, a lot of good money, grants, support, equity investments overall are coming our way. And then what I would like to also mention is that at the moment, there are two major working groups, let's say, performing and convening in Latvia regarding, first of all, the national startup strategy. So representatives of the government and non-government organizations, the ecosystem itself, regularly meet up to shape the strategy for developing the startup ecosystem, and the tangible results should be available by more or less the end of summer. And another effort is also to shape the fintech strategy, so with a focus on the financial technologies, which will be delivered sometime in the fall. And working groups, one could imagine that it's not exactly maybe the fun side of the ecosystem, and yeah, naturally so. It's long discussions, it's difficult discussions, it's a long process overall. But why it matters? Well, it does lay foundation for the commitment of the government to really place their support and yes, to commit to the startup ecosystem, and it will also transform into the basis for financial support. So while it's quite maybe tough for those who are going through it, it's definitely worth it, I believe so. And if I compare the situation currently with let's say 5 years ago or so, this is really a next step when things like that are being discussed and polished at such high level. So a lot of expectations from startup ecosystem towards this government-run working groups. No pressure, but there's a lot of pressure. And well, I mentioned already that Latvia is currently the government is planning the next period of the EU funds, which Latvia will receive, right, and channel further into the development of the economy. But another thing is, of course, the EU funds, which are available to startups directly from the European Union Commission, right? So from the EU, as we say, to put it simply, without actually Latvia being involved. And also in that sense, there are quite a lot of new programs knocking on our door. You perhaps have heard that Horizon 2020 is now being replaced with Horizon Europe, and there is EIC Accelerator and Innovation Fund, which offer quite substantial grants / equity investment. Altogether, we are speaking about 3, 4, 5, 10 million euros, right? So available for those companies, including startups who are ready to scale, who are ready to, maybe address yet another big challenge, and here are the funds available for them. So we do see in Latvian startup ecosystem that the interest for such programs is peaking. And for instance, as association, we will be doing our best to inform the startups about what programs are there, what they mean, how to apply, and things like that. Another interesting update, well, I was talking about the national government of Latvia, but then here we talk about the local government or the municipality, in this case of Riga, the capital of Latvia. It is a very interesting time because Riga municipality has joined hands with startup ecosystem, I would say for the first time in such proper and meaningful manner, at least that I remember. The memorandum is signed with the main players of the ecosystem, and they are stepping towards us and they are stepping forward, offering strategic help and also mobilizing some financial support to make Riga as a city stand out in Latvia as a startup hub, as an innovation hub. So it's really great to see. And remember, I was already talking about the future mobility and smart technologies. So yes, Riga municipality is also joining the club with the piloting 3 areas in Riga for different technologies related to smart city. So basically, they will be testing and piloting a lot of interesting technologies in 3 areas of Riga. So once perhaps COVID is over and people start, traveling and visiting us, those 3 areas are must see. So please do put them on your to see list when you are in Riga, and I hope it will be soon. Interesting updates from academic sector. Again, just for your understanding, that it's been quite active as well. And at this particular moment, a few universities, the largest ones, are expecting the answers and the decisions which the government makes in relation to innovation grant for students. That's another, let's say, EU program, to put it simply. Which is designed to support student innovation and acceleration of their ideas with a hope and big ambition to see more startups coming into play and into the ecosystem, right? So this is the second batch that the projects were submitted. The first has already happened, and a big bunch of universities launched the programs. The programs working directly with students, linking them with startups and whatnot. Quite interesting processes overall. And this is now happening with the second batch. The interest from student side is enormous. This program makes me particularly happy because we often talk that in Latvia we have quite a big problem with, with supporting new talent. The startup ecosystem lacks talent overall, be it IT or managers or designers. So yeah, I hope that this is a good platform to mobilize and encourage and support that talent. And another interesting piece of trivia for you guys is that the prorector of RTU, the Riga Technical University, Talis Juhna, was just recently selected as the advisor to the United Nations. And it's quite a big deal. Europe is represented just by two scientists, one from Latvia, one from Austria. Around the globe, there are about a dozen, and they will be advising the UN on, promoting the marriage, I call it, of science, innovation, and technologies. Nothing particular yet to report along these lines, but let's see how it goes. But definitely an interesting piece of trivia, I hope, for you. And then perhaps just, to conclude this whole sneak peek into the startup ecosystem in Latvia, just, to mention those events, the major events which have been happening this year. And it's Deep Tech Atelier, which happened in April in hybrid form. So some speakers flew in, despite COVID, was pretty good, organized by the government, and with a particular focus on space tech and med tech. So remember how I told the government has their big hopes for deep tech overall. So it comes, this event comes hand in hand with that idea, and it's a good platform, to marry the science and the business. And then, of course, it was mentioned already, TechChill did happen just in May, just a few weeks ago. Good job, guys. It was tough, but I heard the numbers of speakers, attendees, and so on, and it's quite a big deal, I would say, right? So it was hosted under the slogan, let's say, point of no return, and really it is. And our startup, Latvian startup Longenesis, won the 50 founder battle, which is, again, congratulations to Sergey and the team. And then another interesting event is coming in November, again, organized by the government, and it's a 5G territory. It will happen for the fourth time, if I'm not mistaken. And why I placed it here, because I think it's very interesting how this event grew from, a mere Latvian, then Baltic level event into something where the organizers and the community, the organizers are trying to transform this event into global community. So there are a lot of big hopes also linked to 5G overall. And by the way, I just heard that some clients of LMT, that's one of the largest telecom, and MikroTik just launched the first 5G routers offered to LMT clients. So now some lucky hundreds of people are testing that out, which is good to see something happening around 5G in actual practice, right? So not just words and big hope and visions, but actual testing happening. Although, yeah, people were wearing the foil hats for a long time already, but this is the result I really was willing to see. Anyways, guys, I think that this would be it. Don't want to steal much of your time. Let me just go back to the stream to see if perhaps there were any comments or questions. Well, I do not see that. Yeah, then the presentation is out of the screen. Thank you so much for your time. I think this is where I say bye.
Yes, thank you, Olga. Thank you a lot. I think this was a great insight, and we're really happy to hear about the first unicorn. Hoping here also that it is just the first point on a timeline with many milestones yet to be achieved. And again, there's a lot of great things going on in the Latvian startup ecosystem on top of that. So both for startups, academics, students, everyone involved. And when we talk about investors, as we heard, we have the first unicorn, and we're seeing that foreign investors are ready to put their trust into Latvian founders, Latvian startups, and they believe that they can make it big in the world. But our first unicorn is not the only startup. There are plenty of more. And while some investors might be a bit reluctant to start investing in Latvian startups, once they do, I think they always come back. And that's what we want to figure out today in the next panel. These are the reasons why foreign VCs should choose to look at Latvian startups and invest in them, and why they have done it before. So I would like to introduce the panelists that we're going to have today to talk about why invest in Latvian startups and what is the VC perspective of this. And the first panelist is Eva R. She's a VC investor from 3VC, which was previously known as Capital 300. They are partnering up with visionary European founders across the Baltics, CEE, and also the German-speaking region. And what makes us the most interested is their investment in Latvian startup Localize. Then joining also is Andris K. Berziņš. He's the managing partner of Change Ventures. It is the first truly pan-Baltic pre-seed and seed fund in the Baltic states. And Andris has had his hand also in many other things related to the Latvian startup ecosystem. He's the founder, one of the founders of TechChill. He was also one of the founders of the very first co-working space in Latvia called Tech Hub RIGA. So he definitely has the knowledge from various points of views. And the panel will be moderated by Julia Gifford. She's the co-founder of True6, the content marketing and PR agency. She's also the English editor at Labs of Latvia. And she's actually is the alumnus of many Latvian startups, including the recent unicorn Printful, along with others. So Julia, please, the stage is yours, and let the panel begin.
Hello, thank you for that lovely introduction. Absolutely, I'm so happy to have the two of you here, two panelists, and I think that we have a very interesting scope here. We have Andris, who is based in Riga, investing in Baltic startups, and then we have Eva, who is on the side of the foreign investment into Latvia from the Vienna-based 3VC investment firm. So I think that we have the two sides of the coin here, and then we'll be able to dive deeper into what it is about Latvian startups that has driven you to take this route and invest in local startups. So, I mean, we know that Eva, thanks to Aris, who just mentioned, 3VC has recently invested in Localize, a Latvian translation management system. And am I correct in saying that this is your first investment in a Latvian startup?
Hi, Julia, great to be here. Yes, you're right. That's our first investment in Latvia, and I'm, of course, super happy about that. It took some time. I think we were in touch with Localize for quite some time until everybody knew how to deploy additional capital. And I hope it's also not the final one, but I think there are good signs showing that there will be more companies, and there are more companies operating out of Latvia that are having increasingly global ambitions. I think that has been probably a bit of bottleneck in the past, having observed the ecosystem for years. And I think now we see more and more companies that dare to and want to actually do something on a global scale.
Well, it's so interesting that you mentioned it, that you've been observing the ecosystem for years, that you had been looking at Localize for a while. So what was it about the ecosystem that attracted your and 3VC's attention, and also, I guess, more specifically in Localize itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are two sides, right? On the one hand, there is the personal one. Being Latvian, of course, I am personally attached, and I would just love to see more stories, more global success stories coming out of Latvia, because I think we all have seen examples in other countries how such success stories accelerate the ecosystem. And this is the one side. Of course, on the professional side, today one can build global businesses out of everywhere, and I think Europe in general is just much more attractive with regards to talent, how much one can build with certain capital. And I think if we normally say that in Europe you need 3 times less money to reach the same thing as in the US, I guess Latvia on that scale still would be even more efficient than Europe in general. And yeah, just the fact that you can build global companies out of everywhere, and that's why we are also very excited about the Latvian ecosystem. And that's why we are also spending some time there.
I love that bit of insight. So it seems like 3VC is ramping up for some more now that that bottleneck has been opened up. And so my question then moves over to Andris. And Andris, you, I think, have invested in almost every hot Latvian startup there is. How many are you going on now? The Baltic?
So thanks, Julia. Actually, I missed some. There are quite a few, or certainly a few very successful Latvian startups that I missed. And so, that's the hardest thing about being an investor is you find out your misses before you find out your hits. But I'm certainly very optimistic, very bullish about the ecosystem in general, the potential next success stories. I keep telling everyone that, this year, 2021, is going to be a very big year for Latvia as well. I think Printful was just the first great news that we have. I think there's more news coming. And in fact, I know there's no more news coming. And so, I'm very excited. I think, the reality, is that, the Estonian and Lithuanian ecosystems, which are the natural comparisons, are more mature right now. You can moan and groan and spend lots of time discussing why and so forth. But the reality is, sometimes, timing is different for different ecosystems and companies, and it takes a while to build something big. And so I think, the Printful story is great. I think Printify, their natural competitor just around the corner here, is also doing super great. And so, so are many other companies in this region. So, I'm hugely bullish.
Sounds like the two of you are saying that now is the time to strike while no one else knows that the iron is hot. So, I mean, Andrei, you touched on a few things that I certainly wanted to talk about, and one being about, first of all, that natural comparison that Latvia is very often lumped into the Baltic category and naturally compared, and sometimes even confused with Lithuania. And so I guess my question would be, how would you describe that difference to others, foreigners who are considering investments in the Baltics?
So actually, if you look at the 3 Baltic states sort of as an outsider, and maybe I'd be interested in Eva's comments on this, but sort of if you're looking from the outside and you're looking at a pan-European view, I don't think that actually the types of companies, the types of entrepreneurs sort of are that different across all 3 Baltic states. So there are some variations. For example, I mean, fintech is probably the one strongest sector across all 3 countries, if you had to pick one sort of biggest sector, but the types of fintech are maybe a little bit different. So, Estonia has had many more successes in the payments space. Lithuania has been more focused on crypto and neobanks with the Bank of Lithuania's activity, and Latvia has had a lot more lending startups because of the history on the lending side. So, there are variations, but I'd say that, from an outsider's view, I don't actually think there are as many differences. I think the main difference Estonia and Lithuania have just deeper ecosystems right now in terms of the number of startups, the number of founders, the number of angel investors, and the amount of capital. But but I think that will over time even out as Latvia catches up.
Great. Well,
I think I can just add, because I wanted to say, I think the sheer difference would be the volume, the quantity. I think in Estonia, there are just way more companies. In Lithuania, there are more than in Latvia, and I hope to see more and more coming from Latvia. And maybe, Andres, you have a better feeling around that, but I would also assume that in Latvia, it still requires some work to educate in general people that working at startups can be very attractive. I think Estonia had this issue years ago when I heard from local investors saying that, you have to pay for companies, for people to join startups more than they would, earn in a corporate. And I think they are past this stage. At least that's what I think. And in Latvia, probably it still just requires some success stories, some work to attract talent into startup companies.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. And in Latvia, I think that was exacerbated by the fact that you had a very big sort of domestic custom programming and outsourcing industry here, actually bigger than in Estonia and bigger than in Lithuania, maybe similar to Lithuania, but bigger relative to the economy. And so much more of the IT talent was devoted to building solutions, custom solutions for other corporate customers. And that has, surprisingly large implications for the startup ecosystem, because you have many people on, who are salary focused, receiving a steady salary for the work they're doing. There is no upside, because with custom programming outsourcing, you can only build as big a business as you have programmers. So, these markets are all limited by the amount of talent. You can't build a programming shop like you might be able to in the Ukraine, Romania, or Belarus, right? And so there was limits there. And so I think exactly that, what Eva said, once you have a few success stories that are startups with equity shared widely among a lot of the early employees, and you have people, and you're a programmer in an outsourcing company, and you see that your friend who you studied with ends up buying his big BMW and nice new house, because he's not like, Tavet Hindrikus, but he may have made, a few $100,000 from an exit. You start to think about, was this the right choice, that I should do this, steady salary job, which pays well, but in the long term has no, big upside. And so I think that calculus is changing. And, I think the Printful announcement and more announcements in the future will change that here as well.
I hope that Printful has a nice stock option plan.
I hope so too. I still have a lot of friends there. You guys are doing an amazing job and already going through all of my questions on your own. So I'm loving the conversation that's going on here. And in addition to the success stories of having that unicorn, having that policy amended to have stock options. Another major trend that we're seeing right now, after Olga's presentation especially, is that I'm noticing a major focus of interest from the government sector in supporting startups. It seems that they've woken up to the reality that this is the biggest opportunity for growth. Do you think that this will also in any way affect the prospects of the local ecosystem's growth?
Well, what I can share a bit my experience from being here in Austria, because Austria probably is one of the countries in Europe where there is a lot of government support, especially financial one in the early stage. And I think that is super helpful, and it makes sense there where the private market kind of still fails. And I think public money should be there to bridge the gap. And I think it makes sense that the government support focuses maybe on deep tech companies and so on, where there is a huge technology risk in a very early stage where private market might still, be reluctant. So that's my opinion. I think that's very helpful, but it's also important then that it's very clear what is the aim, where the support will be going to, and then let the private market do what they are supposed to do, where they feel comfortable investing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think there definitely has been an increase in support and a better understanding. I mean, since the 10 years that I've been trying to convince people in government and parliament that this is an important area, so it's definitely better. Is the understanding that widespread? Not that much, I'd say. That said, to be honest, that's what I hear from the Estonians and Lithuanians as well, that it's very varied. You know, they have some great supporters and some people who still don't understand the value. So, you know, I think that's a long-term game in terms of changing. I think the thing that government can change the most is specifically the rules and processes that affect business formation and the legal structures around which companies are built. And so the stock option reforms in Latvia were a great example, where Latvia was able to introduce actually Europe's and actually the world's most attractive stock option regulations per index ventures analysis, which helps to make stock options a more attractive tool. And we've definitely seen over the last few months since that was adopted, a lot more companies that are actively looking to register their stock option plans and use those to reward employees. And I think that that's an example of the kind of regulatory innovation, you could say, that is helpful. And partly that happened, by the way, because the Index Ventures team is quite happy to showcase the Baltic states being innovators in stock options, because they're trying to push the rest of Europe to catch up. So right now, the Baltic states are the three most attractive places in terms of stock options across all of Europe.
Eva, have you felt, in your experience, that the regulatory landscape makes it easier for you and your company to invest into the Baltics as opposed to in other areas of the world?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, we don't have more investments than localized. We also have a small ticket in Zelf, which is actually Latvian SIA. So there, the experience was actually pretty good. I must say that also those companies have Delaware as their headquarters, but there is still a Latvian entity in between. But it's definitely more advanced than, Germany and Austria with regards to how digital this can be. And I must also say that the experience working with the Latvian legal councils and so on, I think they are professional. They know what they're doing. They have been learning a lot, I think, from the deals in the past year. So that was pretty fine. But I think we haven't invested in a company that has, the Latvian headquarters as, the ultimate headquarters. So I cannot really talk about that.
So I'm going to jump in, Julia, and make some comments, because our fund invests in Baltic founding teams, but actually jurisdiction-wise, we invest both in US headquartered companies and also outside the Baltic states. And we've actually, in the last year, done investments in German headquartered and Spain headquartered companies. And I can tell you the experience is far worse than anything in the Baltic states. It is much, much more bureaucratic, much more expensive in terms of legal work, especially because of the notarization process. So all the digital signature stuff just makes it a breeze to sign investment documents and get things closed. So in that sense, it's a whole different story here.
I feel you, Anders, right? You need power of attorney for every investment in Germany.
Exactly. For every single investor in every single investment, right? It's a pain in the neck.
Yeah, that's fun, especially during COVID, when you cannot go to notary that easily.
Exactly.
I guess we get kind of used to the ease of e-signatures here in the Baltics.
Absolutely, and we get totally spoiled.
Well, here's hoping that, the rest of the world catches on. But you touched on an interesting thing, and I was going to, you're reading my mind on this, jumping in exactly when I wanted to throw it over to you. But also the aspect of investing in Baltic founders, rather than saying only in Baltic founded or headquartered companies. So this seems to be quite a unique concept. Can you walk us through why you've gone for this strategy, and why specifically the Baltics?
So the Baltics, because two basic reasons. We think this region has amazing startups, and we want to stay around here. So I have no interest in spending all my time trying to compete for the best startups in Poland, for example. You know, I'll leave that to the Poles. I'm very happy staying in the Baltics, and my partners are too. So, so that's one part of it. Why Baltic founded? Because we believe, well, we see in fact that there are many good reasons why some founding teams may set up their headquarters elsewhere very early on in the journey of the startup. The most obvious case is if you get into one of the top accelerator programs. So we have 2 investments in Y Combinator startups. And like if you get into YC, it's like a total no-brainer to flip the company to the US, you know, immediately and have a Delaware headquartered company. And, you know, for us, the most important thing is that the nexus of the team is in this region, that they're close to us, that we can build a close relationship with them, help them, support them. But, you know, where the headquarters is registered for us is simply a matter of, you know, convenience and how things happen to have turned out. And that's why you know, we specifically say we can invest anywhere in the world as long as it's a Baltic founder team and has a base here, right? So that's the way we've set up our investors. But I have to say one comment on that. We're increasingly, I think, seeing that there is an acceptance even at later stages to investing in companies that are headquartered here, right? So that wasn't, so 10 years ago, it was like, you will not get a Series A investment unless it's UK or US headquarters, like flip the company or else, right? And that's definitely changing. So Bolt was the first that led the way with, you know, taking a very big growth round into Estonian headquartered company, which is still the case today in their added rounds. And we just completed, last week announced the Interactio Series A round. So it's a $30 million round into the Lithuanian headquartered company by, you know, led by a Silicon Valley startup with a US investor and a London investor. And it was the first, you know, large Series A investment, you know, directly into a Lithuanian headquartered company. So I think that trend is gradually going to accelerate, and there will be, you know, less and less need to flip companies to the US, and it will more depend on whether there are other reasons for doing that than just because the investors kind of are used to US jurisdiction, which is what traditionally was a big driver.
Anders, do you think that the Latvian framework or the Latvian regulatory system is ready also for, you know, US investors investing into Latvian SIA?
I think it's as ready as the Lithuanian or Estonian system. Really, I don't think there's much difference. There's one particular issue which tends to cause a bit of heartburn, which is the in all 3 Baltic states you have restrictions on someone being on the management board as well as the supervisory board, and so that, you know, restriction is very weird for US investors, right? So there is no such restriction in the US. It's not sort of part of the culture, but it's very deeply embedded in Germanic legal codes, and so it's here everywhere. So, but there are those kind of things that, you know, are, you know, potential bottlenecks, but otherwise I don't see that much difference actually. In fact, the Estonian share registration process, if you use the NASDAQ share registration, is actually causes quite a lot of challenges because that is hard to organize from outside Estonia if you don't have an Estonian passport. So, you know, there's no problem really.
Cool.
Great. Investor-specific questions. So one question that I have for Eva and later on also for Andris is about how you spotted your first Baltic investment, your Latvian investment in Localize, and then kind of segueing into the question, if we have others abroad that are listening to you guys and thinking, yeah, you know, they might consider an investment into a Latvian startup, but where might be a good place to look to get acquainted with investment opportunities?
I think for us, both Localize and Zelf, that was a result of me following, you know, the local ecosystem on social media. I think I read about Localize 3 years ago. They were quite small back then, and of course, I got very excited as I saw, wow, there's someone, building a global solution out of Latvia. So that's how, and I just approached them. And it turned out, of course, there are a lot of connections to the team, also given my network. And it was the same with Zelf. So I think I first read about them, I think on the Labs of Latvia or something, that there is a Latvian company. And I was like, well, no, there is someone incorporating Latvia. And I was like, wow, that sounds very exciting. And that's how we then reached out to the founder. So it has been, just engaging with the ecosystem, having several touch points, and then trying to keep a pulse, what's going on, what's new. And with the time, of course, the network evolves and people get to know you as well, and you have more inbound and outbound.
Absolutely. Andre, where would you point potential investors to?
So I think for those coming from outside the region, I think the TechChill conference is the first place you need to come, and it'll be on again live next year, finally. And that's actually, there are some great stories around that. So actually, Hardware Club, that's a co-investor now in Giraffe 360, where we led the seed round. So actually, I invited Jerry to come to TechChill and introduced him to the Giraffe team, and it took a little while, but now they're an investor in Giraffe 360, and I think there'll be more of these stories, and these. I'm still a big believer in face-to-face. I'm going to Vilnius this week for the startup fair there, and can't wait to meet people, because I think that is a big part of investing is shaking hands and seeing the founders face-to-face, and so I think that will be a big important thing. And I know a lot of investors who are excited about this region, who are just waiting for the restrictions to go and want to come visit.
Sounds great. Yes, so this has been a really wonderful conversation, and I feel like it has just pointed to the fact that Latvia is ripe for investment, and is kind of nearing its hockey stick growth angle in the graph, and it seems like we're up for some really exciting times now. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences, and I will throw the conversation back to Aris. So thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Eva and Andres. This was great. It's really points the picture why Latvian startups are attractive to foreign investors. And I think in 2020, we reached the highest amount of foreign investment. And I think by this one unicorn deal, we have already quintupled that number for this year. And obviously the year is not even halfway through. So the number is still to grow. So a lot of exciting things about that. Other than that, I would like to echo once more what Andris said. One of the greatest entry points into the Latvian startup ecosystem and a way to get to know Latvian startups is the TechChill Tech and Startup event. And as mentioned before, we will be going back to a physical event, more or less, next year in February from 17th to 19th. Definitely, whoever's watching, whether you're an investor or a startup, I think it's a great opportunity for you to network, to expand your connections, and to really work on sort of boosting your either fund or startup into the next phase. So we really are welcoming all of you there. We're going to have some parties, we're going to have sauna and beer, of course, as well as the usual business side of what such events provide. And with that, I would like to say that we're more or less at the end of this event, and I would like to hand back the floor to Ben to introduce the next stop on the Global Sesame Tour.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aris and TechChill. Hello, everyone.
Oh, you keep breaking up. So I guess I will try to end this on my own then. So the Global Startup Tour will continue next week on June 8th, and it will focus on the Nordics. All the main tech events will come together, Tech Barbecue from Denmark, and an Oslo Innovation Week, as well as some of the other events. And I think it will be also the Gothenburg Tech Week and Iceland Innovation Week, and also Arctic 15, which takes place both in Stockholm and Helsinki. So definitely check out this one to get a better insight into the whole Nordic ecosystem. I mean, it's a very well-developed ecosystem already, so they definitely will have some ideas and insights to share regarding the ecosystems themselves, and also about the events that each of these organizations is running. So I would like to thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you also on the next stops on the Global Sesame Tour. Thank you.